Good evening, everyone. I am Shubhangi from the Center for International Politics, Organization and Disarmament, and I would like to welcome you all to the fifth walking session titled India as a Civilizational State, Shaping a New Global Consciousness. This session seeks to reflect on India not only as a modern nation state, but as a civilization with deep historical, cultural, and philosophical continuities. In today's world of shifting power dynamics and global challenges, India's civilizational ethos, rooted in plural traditions, intellectual inquiry, and spiritual dialogue, offers unique perspectives for shaping a new and inclusive global consciousness. It is our honor to welcome the chair of this session, Professor Hiraman Tiwari, a distinguished scholar of Sanskrit language, literature, intellectual history, and philosophy, and the chairperson for the Center for Historical Studies, School of Social Sciences, JNU. We welcome you, Professor. Okay. And our esteemed panelists are Professor Anand Ranganathan, who teaches at the Special Center for Molecular Science, Molecular Medicine, JNU. His research expertise is in the area of directed evolution and pathogenesis, with special emphasis on tuberculosis and malaria. He is also the consulting editor of Swarajya. Welcome, Professor Ranganathan. Professor Avadesh Kumar Sharma is a distinguished academician and senior advisor at Shilab International Social Service Organization, New Delhi. He was formerly professor of English at the Bhagalpur University and head of the Department of English in the Faculty of Language at Sana University in Yemen. We welcome you to our panel, Professor Sharma. Shri J. Sai Deepak is an engineer turned senior advocate at the Supreme Court of India and is also an author. He has carved a niche for himself as a litigator in civil, commercial, and constitutional matters and has been involved in several landmark cases. He is well known for his prolific writing on constitutional issues. Welcome, Mr. Sai Deepak. I would now request Dr. Vineet Prakash to welcome our panelists with flowers and mementos to mark this occasion.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I would now like to request Professor Tiwari to take over the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me begin by profusely thanking my dear friend for nearly 4 decades, Professor Amitabh Mattu, the Dean of School of International Studies, an intimidating intellectual and a formidable scholar of international relations. Thank you for this opportunity, and I don't think I deserve this honor. Most importantly, to be sandwiched between the two giants sitting next to me, Anand and Sai. Anand is a dear friend. Sai has become a friend largely because we belong to the same sort of ideology, frankly, let me say that. But also, but I mean, these are two fine minds. Yes, go ahead.
Which is the communist ideology?
I wish, only wish, yes. So my laughter must have betrayed my intentions. So thank you so much. And what should I say? I mean, these three great intellectuals sitting besides me on both right and left, and there I would quote unquote right and left, without any other adjectives, will, of course, need no introduction anywhere. Anand Ranganathan is a regular appearance on television every day and thrashes left and right. Anybody who comes in his way with beautiful words, melodious at times, tantalizing discussions. And Sai Deepak, of course, he roars in the courts and beyond the courts, that is in people's courts. And I must say his books and Anand books, I have read them. I can say that I have devoured them. They are brilliant in their narration. They are deep in their thought. And they are very piercing for those of us who are interested in reading what they write. Professor Sharma, I have not known him, but I'm sure very soon we'll learn what metal he is made of. Thank you very much. Let me, before I begin, and I'll ask, shall I go to Sai first or you first? Okay, Anand, okay. So before I call Anand, he's a dear friend, so I'm no longer going to call him Professor Ranganathan. Before I call Anand to say whatever he has to say, we have decided that 10 odd minutes, all three speakers, because this session we want a rigorous discussion. I'm sure there will be lots of questions from the audience and from even among us. But I wanted to give 2 points, and I wanted to advertise my dear friend Amitabh Mattur's book. The reason being that, it's not that whatever the quotations are there that are not known to me. They are refreshing read, the kinds of translations, interpretations, because this is a reading of the Mahabharata. And therefore, I wanted to quote from here to set the discussion in motion, because I suspect what Anand and Sai are going to speak, maybe they'll disappoint me today, and I would love to be disappointed or dismayed even. That there is an order that is discussed largely in the Indian scriptures, Indian civilization. I wanted to say that Indian civilization does not need anybody's recognition, although many of us are hankering for identity. Anand, Sai, and I also feel we don't need to seek an identity. But because we live in a world where we are competitive at times, we see that we need to be recognized. But I at least draw inspiration from the inscriptions and literature. In this case, this is the study of the Mahabharata that Amitabh Mattu brought out 1.5 years ago, nearly 2 years ago. Strategic choices, ethical dilemmas, stories from the Mahabharata, my most favorite book. The reason being simple. Let me read out one verse which he has interpreted along with his co-authors. I understood it slightly differently. Nevertheless, here I'm not going to discuss how he has delineated the meaning coming from it. And that is going to set the order both for the discussion and also the order that it envisages of the universe. That is, Asmin Mahamoha Maye Katahe Suryagnina Ratri Divaindhanena Masastu Darvi Parighattenena Bhutani Kalaha Pachati Tivarta. There is a very famous line, Kalaha Pachati. This comes from the Rig Veda. But of course, then Mahabharata picks it up and says, it talks about the order of the universe. And that order is connected with 2 terms, which Anand and Sai and Professor Sharma will appreciate, Dharma and Rita. Dharma is a very elusive term. Often it has been interpreted and translated very casually and lazily as religion. I reject it completely. Dharma literally means a kind of order which is based on Rita. These 2 terms sometimes are used interchangeably in the Ramayana, in the Mahabharata, in the Upanishads. And the definitions are very clear, both here as in this Mahabharata and in the Ramayana, and they become later on a little hazy and expansive as the literature moves on. But what it says the order of the world. Kalaha pachati, the time cooks. That's the literal translation of this thing. And what is that time? It cooks in this gigantic cauldron of the universe. Maha Moha Maye. A gigantic cauldron which is full of illusion. That's the universe, world. Kataha means kalahi, literally. And what are its ladles and elements with which it cooks? The day and night are its fuel. And the months and the seasons are the ladles, because you need to stir the world in order to bring about an order. And that order emerges from Rita and takes the shape of Dharma. And then I'll quickly quote and close very quickly. A few pages before that, Professor Amitabh Mattu has quoted a verse which I think Sai Deepak will pick up, and then, of course, perhaps also Anand. I'm not assuming what they're going to say. Dharma eva hato hanti. Dharmo Rakshati Rakshitaha. Yesterday somebody mentioned it. I think you mentioned it. Dharmo Rakshati Rakshitaha. Dharma, the order, will protect you only if you protect the order. Whether it is the Buddha who believes in the discipline, and therefore he writes Vinaya Pitaka, the order of Sangha and people. So unless you protect the Dharma will not protect you. And that Dharma is in the shape of Rita. Tasmat dharmam natyajyami. Therefore, I must never abandon Dharma. This is my translation. Sorry, I'm going away from your translation. Mano dharmo hato avadhit. And therefore, you should never consider that if we abandon Dharma, we should never complain if we are killed. Because unless Dharma is protected, and I'll end by saying, before I invite Anand, I remember one of the discussions in a podcast Sai Deepak mentioned, unless we protect ourselves, nobody else is going to protect us. And therefore, unless we protect Dharma, Dharma will abandon us if we abandon Dharma. Thank you very much, Anand. The floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to this absolutely august gathering. It's a pleasure and an honor, and also to be sharing the stage with absolute giants from whom I'm learning constantly. And thank you, Hiraman, for that introduction. I'll give you my wife's mobile number. If even 5% of the compliments you have given me, if she gives me, my condition wouldn't be... Oh, yeah. Yes, my condition wouldn't be like this. In fact, I'm single-handedly contributing to the malnutrition cases of India right now because of... it's an amazing, incredible topic to put one's views on if you think about it. And if you don't think about it, you can talk about it for about a day without people realizing what you've said. I, fortunately for myself, and I suppose for the audience as well, thought a little about it. What is it that one can say or put one's points across that hasn't already been said? For 2,000 years, is there something new that I can say? I doubt it, because I belong to that community that believes is hardly any original idea ever. People have already thought of whatever you think you've thought of. But still, I'll plod on and just say my two bits here, starting with this grand word, civilization. And of course, the idea, as Hiraman, from Professor Mattu's book also so eloquently described, has to be saved. But what is civilization? Have we realized what civilization is? And second, having realized what civilization is, there is our civilization, their civilization, somebody else's civilization. The next point to contemplate is, what are we proud of in our civilization? Or are we proud of only the things that our civilization did? What about the things, the great discoveries and inventions that other civilizations do? Are we not proud of that? It's a very complex issue to disentangle. And I want to do that from a scientific lens, if I may, because I think that's very important. People don't infuse a lot of Darwin or science or elementary physics or thinking, I call that as philosophy, to be honest, in thinking about these grandiose terms. And I think all of us are in a rat race of some sort or the other. But if we sit back and think about the last 500, 600 years, which is absolutely nothing in the evolutionary timescale of 14 billion years, we'd realize that we're constantly expanding. We're expanding from one system to the next, increasing our population, one town to the city, to metro, to one nation to the others. We are constantly expanding in our thoughts. Each of our disciplines is expanding. We're not contracting. We're constructing all the time. We're not deconstructing. And if we were to deconstruct, if we were to use that lens of deconstruction, we'll come at a completely different answer to what I dare say the four of us have possibly thought of. And Hiraman already alluded to one. He was being complimentary I won't use the word pigeonholing, but labeling, you can say, in a positive sense. When he says, I share somebody's ideology, I really don't know what is to be shared in any ideology. I really don't. From this lens. And I think my guru in that sense, of course, the overarching guru is Darwin, but in this context, the guru has to be Hubble. Because it was Hubble who taught us expansion is not everything. You need to go back, you need to travel down the cone to the point of the cone where you contracted to such an extent where you had the space-time singularity, the birth of the Big Bang. And it was through Hubble's shift and his redshift experiment that we know the age of the universe, that we know that the universe is always expanding. But if you were to contract, you would arrive at that profoundly philosophical concept which right now we call as the Big Bang. But beyond that, if you were to contract, you would realize that people who are talking about their civilization, people who are proud of the discoveries or inventions of their civilizations, are complete products of pure chance. If I am proud of Indian civilization, it is pure chance that, two cells decided to meet and Anand was born in India. If I talk about India, if somebody talks of Persia, if somebody talks of Ethiopia, that's in the last 2,000, 5,000 years. We never talk of that event that happened in the primordial soup 3.5 billion years ago, when you had a few elemental units of life, as were shown by the famous experiment in 1953, where you created the atmosphere of primitive Earth and you had the voltaic discharge, and then you suddenly found out that you could actually get nucleic acids and amino acids, and then suddenly from there, you could actually, going by Jostak's protocell, going by William Stemmer's sexual PCR and genome sequencing, realize that we are actually products of complete chance. That few elements got together, and then you had building blocks, and then you had nucleic acids, and then you had replication, protocell, and from there, we are here. What should we be proud of then? That's not my, okay, right. For a second, I thought it was my wife trying to find. What are we proud of? I mean, when did I, as an Indian national, stop thinking that I was an Ethiopian? Why are my ancestors Hindu and not Lucy? These are the questions that make you temporarily forget the textbook definition of civilization. And now that from this lens we've forgotten it, Hiraman, how much time do I have? Another 2 minutes? I know, 2 minutes, 30 seconds then. Then we arrive at a conclusion as to what next is civilization. Is it sartorial splendor? Is it poetry, books, literature? Is it something to do with scientific discovery? I don't think so. And I'll tell you what made me realize that. On 23rd of January 2024, a day before the consecration of Ram Mandir, I was on the streets, lucky enough to be on the streets of Ayodhya, and so was Sai. He was lucky enough to be inside the temple. I saw 15-year-olds dancing on the street. And I said, hang on, why are they doing this? They don't even know the history of the Ram Janam Bhoomi. They don't know what was there before it, the mosque, which temple existed before it. And yes, it was a Hindu temple, even though many might disagree. They don't know anything about it. And when they were born, their parents looked at them and did they say that I want him to be a doctor or an engineer or a journalist? Okay, not a journalist, but a social scientist. Did they say, I want him to fight for the rights of his ancestors? No parent ever does that. Why were they dancing then? They were dancing because that is what civilization is. Civilization is correcting the historical wrongs that were meted out to your ancestors. And that is my belief of what civilization is. And I'm proud of the Indian civilization, but I also ache for correcting the injustices done to Aboriginals of Australia, or in Africa, or in Ethiopia, or in any part of the world that defines me as a human being. And I think once we realize that, we realize suddenly that other than Hubble, if there is one other person that made us realize this, it was through his book, The Origin of Species. And we love to read a lot of books that are to do with religion. We consecrate them and we worship them. And I sometimes wish that we worshipped The Origin of Species. Thank you. I shall end there.
Thank you so much. I think that is very, very moving. I just very quick intervention, because it was last week that I had a very strange experience. I was giving a keynote address in the Institute of Advanced Studies in Shimla. And it was a large audience. One lady came up to me, because I often say it in a lighter vein, but somehow deep down in my heart I believe that everywhere I go, whether it is in the West or in India, when I hear Kalidas is the Shakespeare of the East, I feel offended. And in the same vein I said, because whatever I have read Shakespeare, and mind you, I have enough. And what certainly Kalidas, I said in a lighter vein, if I were to give a title, I would say that Shakespeare is not qualified even to be the attendant of Shakespeare. That lady was very offended. He said, do you have to denigrate other great people to praise your own people? Then I said, please go and read Boris Johnson's London. And what he says, he said, we are proud of Shakespeare because Shakespeare is a quarry of English language and he is our Homer. Should we not be proud of Vyasa, Vaishampayana, Kalidas, Bharavi, Bhasa, Saumilla, Bhavabhuti? Because these are the people who have shaped the Indian intellectual era and modern scholars. So thank you very much for, and I do feel that I am proud of, and I belong to 50 kilometers away from Ayodhya, so I know this place very well. Sai Deepak, please.
Namaste, Jai Shri Ram. So the topic that has been given to us is India as a civilizational state shaping a global consciousness. In a single breath, this topic has clear esoteric loftiness and a certain degree of practicality, because you seem to be speaking of consciousness and the civilizational state in the same breath. In my view, while Bharat must aspire to shape global consciousness, in its current state of mind, I believe that it is at the heart of a churn, or perhaps what I call a metaphysical civil war, wherein it is not a battle of ideologies, It is not a battle of political sciences. It is not a battle of political affiliations. It is not a battle of linguistic affiliations or regional affiliations. It is a battle of metaphysics. At the heart of it, that is what I will bring it down to in terms of brass tacks. And the reason why I say that is, while I certainly believe that Bharat has the potential to shape a global consciousness and therefore a global order, a new global order, at this point we are perhaps not even anywhere close to the tipping point. We are inching towards it, because as we seek to decolonize and we seek to celebrate our past, the contentious aspects of our past, both immediate and ancient and medieval, will have to be set straight in terms of the record before you can project a consciousness for the rest of the world to adopt. At this point, what we are perhaps projecting is not consciousness but confusion, is my humble view. And this is not the function of any particular dispensation, but this is the function of where we are at history. Assuming for a moment that liberalization had taken place not in 1991, but perhaps 2 decades earlier, there's a decent chance that we would have been at this state in 1991. Because you would have managed to address questions of basics in terms of Maslow's needs, and from there you'd have started asking questions of culture. So this question has started raising its head or rearing its head almost 70 years after independence, which I think is a tad bit too late for a civilization that wants to call itself the oldest and perhaps the wisest. That we'll see how wise it is as time goes by. In my view, there are 3 or 4 things that we may want to consider before we proceed to shape global consciousness, which is to ask ourselves, what is the consciousness of the Bharatiya civilization in the first place? And here perhaps there are a couple of principles and, let's say, building blocks that I'd want the audience to consider. Bharat is fundamentally a fusion of a pantheistic metaphysics and a henotheistic metaphysics, which means it sees God in all things, it sees Parabrahman in all things and the supreme consciousness in all things. And therefore, from there it comes down to the level of henotheism, wherein it believes in the universality of a particular supreme consciousness, but it believes in polytheism in action, which is to say that it is monotheistic in principle and polytheistic in fact, to put it in the words of Max Muller, because that's how he defined henotheism. Which means, while there may be one universal truth at the level of metaphysics and philosophy, at the Vyavaharik level, and by the time we come down to the level of practicalities and application, those manifestations become individual, they become different, and therefore diversity in expression is to be expected at that particular level. This civilization cannot be understood without its own arrangement or without its own understanding of metaphysics in the first place. Therefore, civilization is only downstream of metaphysics. So you start with metaphysics, from there you go to culture, from there you go to society, and from there you go to state, and from there you go to the Vishwa. That is the order. And just so that I get this right, this is to tie into what Mr. Tiwari or Dr. Tiwari actually suggested. Metaphysically, we believe in the concept of Rita. That is something called as universal good or bad, or universal morality, or the morality of the universe in that sense, if not universal morality. Second is, from metaphysics you come down to religion, which is a crude approximation for Dharma, very crude approximation for Dharma. So metaphysics to religion, Rita to Dharma. From religion you come down to society, therefore from Dharma you come down to Rashtra. From society you come down to state, and therefore from Rashtra you come down to Rajya. From state you come down to the world, and therefore from Rajya you come down to the Vishwa. This, I think, is the order, which is Rita, Dharma, Rashtra, Rajya, Vishwa, metaphysics, religion, or religion, culture, society, state, and the world. Today the battle is being constantly fought on social media platforms at the crudest, most superficial level possible, where you're fighting on political affiliation when there are serious underlying problems which are at the heart of the issue. In my view, the fight is between monotheism versus pantheism and henotheism on the other hand. Until that particular battle is resolved, one way or another with some kind of reconciliation or extinction, whichever way you see it, depending on which way the wind blows. There is no way the rest of the issues can be addressed. So Bharat wants to be this big tent. I consciously avoid using the word big church because that is the usual word. I prefer to use the word big tent. Big tent of everything from matter to antimatter, in the hope that somehow it will find a way to reconcile both and harmonize both. That would have worked if at least there is some element of tolerance or acceptance within monotheistic traditions. But fundamentally, if it sets itself and pits itself against the other, and there is an element of rejection without which its identity is incomplete, then it's only a matter of time before it becomes a tussle, a struggle, and a war. So I don't see this as a battle that started from 700 AD. Perhaps it started with the advent of Tathagata Buddha. And ever since it's been going on. And while we want to trace, let's say, the advent of monotheism and the attendant behavior to one particular group or community or mindset, which we believe has come from outside, did we actually sow the seeds and lay the fertile ground for that very same thought through Bharat is a question that we don't wish to address. And therefore, unless we address that, we will never be able to answer the question of who aided Bakhtiyar Khilji in the destruction of certain universities. Who invited him to do so to settle what scores? Those questions will never be addressed. So what I believe is, Bharat must certainly want to shape global consciousness, but right now it is, in my view, being a poor, cheap imitator of Western consciousness. And it hasn't come to the level of policy because it celebrates its own consciousness and its own civilizational origins and contributions at a symbolic and an ornamental level, but not at the level of practical policy application. So if your beliefs don't translate to any kind of policy application, it's like the Indian ethnic wear that you choose to wear at Diwali, but it has no application when you choose to go to your office spaces on a daily basis. It has no relevance whatsoever. It is an ornament. Therefore, if Bharat really wants to be at the big table of global powers, and if it believes that economics is going to do the trick on its own, sorry, I don't think that works. Because along with economics, what the world respects at that table is military heft, but which is preceded by and which is centered and rooted in some kind of vision which is original, unique, and your own. So culture, economics, and muscle go hand in hand. And Bharat seems to focus on economics and muscle, which it must, in the interest of self-preservation, given the lessons of history it is yet to draw lessons from, or let's say the periods of history we are yet to draw lessons from. But it must start defining its cultural origins and its, let's say, its theistic origins better. It is constantly trying to beat around the bush on that subject by saying we are the land of this and we are the land of that, as opposed to actually having a debate on whose land is this and why. Because ultimately those are the issues that have turned campuses into battlegrounds. And if you do not have the guts or the gumption or the reed ki haddi to discuss those issues internally, आप वैश्विक तौर पे क्या discuss करेंगे वो तो मुझे नहीं पता है, because they are not going to sit tight and wait for you to preach gyan to them. So maybe, in my assessment, the next 10 or 15 years, we'll see two things. Bharat's economic rise and its confidence being a thorn in the flesh of quite a few powers, both in the East and the West, and who you think as friends may not turn out to be friends ultimately. And you will realize that until you have the ability to go on your own, you won't have the ability to reshape the world or the global order. And simultaneously, there will be a raging battle in all parts of Bharat, played out at the metaphysical level and the physical level. Now, this won't be a linear equation, because history never works in linearity. It is never in seriatim. This will be non-linear. So while you address external challenges, you will have to constantly address the raging fire within. And in my view, external threats are easier to handle because there is some way of pinning the tag of the other on the external person, and usually translates to territorial aggression and economic aggression. The internal battle is the deeper battle because the introduction of a Trojan virus inside the heart of Bharat's consciousness is what has been playing itself out, according to me, for the last 2,000 years, not 1,400 years or 700 years. So until that Trojan is addressed, which happens to be the root of all intolerant traditions, we will continue to water that particular Trojan in the belief that it will coexist. Some of the most vociferous movements in this country and divisive movements in this country are not funded by our friends on either sides of the Atlantic. They are funded by entities which are to the east of Russia. And that is something that we may not want to address. And east of Russia is not necessarily America. There is another country in between, which we think is our friend. Because we define friendships on geopolitical basis, on territorial basis, on military basis, on economic basis. But we still don't have the clarity to define who is a friend and who is an enemy from a cultural perspective. So someone can be a friend geopolitically, but ultimately could be your metaphysical adversary. And that clarity is important. Grateful. Thank you.
What a logical and very rational interpretation. That also, I take it that it is not only just an advice, but a warning what we should do as far as Bharat civilization is concerned. And what you said, the three words which will resonate, I think, in the audience as well. What is the original, what is so unique, and what is your own. Thank you very much, Sai Deepak. Without wasting any time, because we do want some time at the end to have a freewheeling discussion. Professor Sharma, please. Oh, so sorry. Sorry.
I'll begin with the last part of the topic, how to shape global consciousness. Now, I happen to teach in a university in Arab for 22 years, but out of these 22 years, only once a group of 3 students, they pestered with me, asking me to get converted. And remember, the way they asked me to get converted was not like what Jhangur Baba or whosoever does here in India. Very politely, very affectionately, I asked them, why do you want me to get converted? And they said, you know, you are such a nice gentleman and you won't go to heaven. So we want you to go to heaven. I said, okay. And then I had in my bag a magazine published from one of the centers of Ramakrishna Mission. And at the back of that magazine was a quote from Vivekananda, which said, I want to take humanity to a height where there will be no Veda, no Bible, no Quran, and yet all the values enshrined in these scriptural texts should be there. I made them read that, and they were intelligent, they understood. And they very politely told me, sir, this is something which no Muslim can understand. I did what you asked me to do to promote global consciousness. Now, what is global consciousness? Consciousness, first of all, I came across this term in one of the essays of Virginia Woolf, who said, life is not a series of gig lamps symmetrically arranged. Life is a luminous halo, a semi-transparent envelope surrounding us from the beginning of consciousness to the end. Just one consciousness. There was a scientist who said consciousness is singular, of which there is no plural. So it can't be my consciousness and your consciousness. It's our consciousness. It's human consciousness. Chandogya Upanishad begins with a verse which can be translated as the essence of all beings is the earth. The essence of earth is water. The essence of water are plants. The essence of plants is man, man in the generic term, women included. Man, the essence of man is language. The essence of language is Rig Veda. The essence of Rig Veda is Sam Veda. The essence of Sam Veda is Udgit, that is Om. Now, what I mean to say is that whether it is man, that is human beings, or it is the earth, or it is water or plants, all have the same consciousness. In the Gita, Lord Krishna says, among the trees I am people. Among the birds I am Garud. Among the animals I am cow. Among Pandavas I am Parth, Arjuna, and so on. So Krishna is consciousness, and the same consciousness permeates all beings. Then, 1 minute. In Kathopanishad, the term used for consciousness is Brahma. And it says, Esa sarvesu bhutesu. He is there in all beings. In Chandogya Upanishad again, Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma, all that there is a manifestation of Brahma. And in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Yagyavalk says to his wife Gargi, O Gargi, that one universal, imperishable consciousness has penetrated everything in this universe. So that one consciousness, we may call it global consciousness. So,
thank you so much. Thank you so very much. This is such a treat. I wanted to go on listening to you as you were, paraphrasing those verses. They were ringing in my head. I just want the audience to have their chance. And we, without any wasting any second, I want people to identify themselves very quickly and ask a short and pointed question. No interpretation, only questions if they have. If you have no questions, please don't ask. Yes.
Good evening, sir.
And identify the person you want to ask.
Good evening, sir.
Except me.
My question is addressed to Anand sir.
Yes.
I am Nitish Kumar from SIS MA program. As Anand sir has rightly mentioned that humanity has common origin somewhere back in Africa. So my question is that what salience does the debate around Aryan invasion have in India, given the fact that everybody came from Ethiopia?
So the question is whether Aryan invasion theory is true or not. That's the question?
Relevant or not?
Israel. Yeah, it's worthy of the debate in so much as it tries to set policies regarding education or otherwise for Indians. If it doesn't, if it is a purely academic exercise, then it doesn't matter. But the problem is we know that it matters. We know that people who were proponents of it had an agenda to peddle only their version of history. And as I say, nations weaken not because of their past, but rather by how they are taught it. And if you are taught, as we were for 70 years, that everything that originated from this land was rubbish and we were worth nothing and everything came from outside and all great inventions were imported, then you become a weak nation. You become a nation that is not confident of what it is trying to achieve. Now, many might say that, look, hey, you are being contradictory out there. On one hand, you talk about universal values, thinking of yourself as an Ethiopian, and on the other hand, you are saying, well, let's talk about, exposing people who think things have come from outside. There is no contradiction whatsoever, because at the end of the day, I am for telling the truth and I am for removing all discrimination. These are my two axioms. And you look around and you find out people from, sorry to use this, left, right, or whatever spectrum it may be, how many people are willing to espouse these two axioms of removing discrimination wherever it happens and of telling the truth? Let me give you one example, one from the left and one from the right. Again, I don't pigeonhole anyone, but this is the thing, because people pigeonhole me, so I don't mind pigeonholing them. So there's someone, a fascist right-winger, telling you this. One from the right, Hindu Dharma, Hindu civilization has to be protected. Of course it has to be protected. But the question is, are you protecting it? And the emphatic answer is absolutely not. You've had 11 years. You could have, I'm not talking of Hindus asking for appeasement. They're asking for discrimination to be removed from them, from their society, from their community. And you've done absolutely nothing. I'll give you a few examples if people think I'm talking about in abstract terms. Why is it that only Hindu-run schools have an obligation of having 25% reservations for the economically weaker section? Why do Muslim-run schools or Christian-run schools don't? Can any of you, I don't want to label you as people coming from some religion or from ideology, Doesn't each one of you feel that that is discrimination right there? What have you done to remove that or ask for that to be removed? So, when the people who say discrimination should be removed, Hindu civilization should prosper, they themselves are not doing it. And finally, 30 seconds. Yes, I've taken an example of a hypocrisy from the right. Of course, I have to talk about the rampant hypocrisy from the left. When you knew that there was a temple that existed, and on top of that, a mosque was built up, not just at one place, at hundreds of places, possibly thousands of places. There are examples right now where you can see the demolished temple, on top of that, the mosque is there. There are places where you have buried broken idols on the steps so that people who are going inside to pray at a mosque can trod on them. You've seen all that. And the same person who says this should not be corrected asks for Churchill statues or Cecil Rhodes statue to be pulled down, King Leopold statues to be pulled down, rights to be given to the Aboriginals, the South American South Confederacy generals to be removed from the history books. The same people say that this barbarity should continue here. So it's very simple for me. There is no contradiction. You have two axioms. One, you tell the truth, put the truth on the table, and you remove discrimination.
Thank you so much. And how so much we wanted to hear more questions from Sai Deepak, but the time has told us, no, we can't move any further. So thank you very much. And thank you to my panelists, Sai Deepak, Anand Ranganathan, and Avdesh Sharma ji. Thank you very much. And thank you, the audience, for listening to us in a rapt attention. Thank you.
Thank you for this very exciting session on a theme that needs far more attention and deliberation than it has had so far. We will now take a short break for tea, coffee, and some fresh air.